Well, so there were two. So like the Pep Squad and stuff was fun.
Okay.
And that could be slapstick and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the actual acting, like I had to learn lines and it had to be a persona, right? Because you're a character. So that was definitely more challenging because I suck at like memorizing things. Mm-hmm. And so having to memorize lines and know your cues and when to come on and what line do you come after and all that stuff like was always really challenging. Mm-hmm. And of course in college I got typecast as a drunk in like 3 or 4 plays where I'd have like little bit lines. And so finally I asked the directors and I was like, dude, why am I always the drunk? Like,
and what did they tell you?
They were like, oh, you're really good at it. And I'm like, oh, great. Because even in like the musical Into the Woods, I played Cinderella's father, who has one line and comes across with a bottle of wine. And he's like lit. No. And I'm like, so even in a musical, I was like a drunk guy.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But it was fun.
That's funny. Yeah. And what were some of the like more difficult characters that you had to play? Like,
I think one of the toughest ones I played was there's a musical called Godspell.
Godspell, okay.
And I played the lead for some reason, which I was thankful to get. But the character it's based around the Bible, but it's done in like the late '60s, early '70s with kind of a hippie vibe, and they're like a traveling carnival. And so the Jesus character's name is Stephen. And and he wears like a Superman shirt.
Okay.
And so that was a lot of lines. And like, it's kind of like, there's magic tricks at one point. And so you have to do this stuff while you're singing. And And I kind of blanked on stage one performance. I was doing these, magic tricks and stuff right before a song. And I'm standing on a bench and I've got the whole cast around me. And we're doing all this stuff, and I totally go blank. And I'm like, so I just keep pulling handkerchiefs, right? Because I'm like, I don't know. And like, I think somebody like realized like, Paul doesn't know what the crap is next. So they were like, hey, Steven, weren't you going to tell us about blah? And I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So, oh, my gosh.
It happens. But
yeah, I mean, those are some pretty big fills the shoes. Those are some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah. It's got a lot of soul, too.
Sandals, yes. Keep rolling with the puns,
Yeah. Don't be such a heel.
That's funny. So, interesting. And, like, as you carried through this acting persona, and yet you identified yourself as like an introvert?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I definitely, am social.
Yeah.
But I feel more comfortable most of the time just kind of hanging out by myself.
So when you feel like you do your best acting and whatever, it's like it's almost kind of like we're in Paul's room and everybody's
we're in the space. Yeah.
That's cool. So the name of this podcast is called Terraforming the Subconscious.
Okay.
And on this podcast, we ask, have you ever thought of your soul as a place? What might your spiritual landscape look like? And then we literally just explore that together. So
cool.
Had you ever thought of your soul as a place before?
No. There's been some times where I wondered if I had one.
Interesting.
No, you just kind of go through like stuff where you're like, oh. But I think if it was to be one, I think maybe like a carnival.
Interesting. A carnival. And so I know when you threw out the play that, you felt like it was that had a carnival-esque theme to it. Did that have anything to do with it? Or where do you think this carnival comes from?
I think because I'm kind of a jack of, a lot of trades and master of none, like a carnival has the same things, like multiple things you can do. When you get in there, there's, the midway and there's rides and there's, the sideshow stuff.
Okay.
And so there's little facets of everything that you can experience while you're at the carnival.
Cool. So take me to your place. Like, what does your carnival kind of look like? Like, how do we enter?
I think it would be, through like the regular like gate arch thing.
Okay.
With like the ticket booth and, normal.
What does your archway kind of look like? Do you see it in any kind of detail?
Well, I don't know. The first thing that popped in my head when you asked that was like an old, like almost run down, like barnwood type Like,
interesting. Okay.
Like
okay.
arch, you know, like it's kind of weathered.
Okay, so does this carnival have like almost like a state fair kind of feel?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there's multiple things going on. Maybe some like bulbs that are lit, but not all of them, right?
Right. And does that
like,
reflect how I feel, you know? Okay, cool. All right. So it's like a rundown state fair kind of thing and kind of just like jerry-rigged together, you know?
Yeah, but comfortable and not like scary.
Yeah. Okay. You know? Okay. So it's not a scary carnival.
No.
How would you describe the feeling of it?
I mean, I think family friendly, you know, hanging out with your friends.
Okay.
Like, I don't know that it would be anything over the top though. I'm not a big thrill seeker.
Okay.
So there's probably no zip lines or bungee random springy things.
You know, people say that, but the scariest rides that you can get on are actually at the state fair. Like, even though the roller coaster doesn't go that high off the ground or there's no flips, it's like you never know like who like welded that, put it together.
It's like on the back of a VW bus or something.
That's the biggest $20 risk of your life right there. If you want a real thrill,
right?
The state fair carnival, you know. That's cool. All right. And so what do you feel like the food and like what's kind of in the center?
Yeah, I think the center is like sort of that typical midway where there's, you know, food vendors and there's like the games that you can do, you know, random stuff and win a stuffed animal that you're never going to use.
You give it to,
or the oversized pencil.
Yeah.
You know, that you thought as a kid was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sat like in the corner of your room. So I think that's probably in the middle.
Okay.
And then I definitely see like, you know, like a sideshow, like a sort of carny type thing going on at some point.
Oh, okay. What do you see there?
Well, and I think that comes from the last 5 or 6 years for Halloween's one of my favorite like holidays.
Oh, cool.
And so I would do like a creepy carnival theme.
Okay.
For the last 5 or 6 years.
And at your house?
At my house, yeah, at the old house. And so I think part of me still is intrigued with that, like, you know, and just the, you know, craziness of not necessarily scaring people, but having something unusual going on.
Yeah. Something a little like turned on its head, you know, like upside down.
Yeah, and I think for me, it kind of goes back to like the acting stuff. Like, I seem like a pretty straight-laced, you know, average person.
You seem like you would be like a very introverted when you kind of meet you, like, you know, or like your initial presence seemed like you would be more of an introvert, but you're so comfortable like as an extrovert and you're such a natural.
I think I'm initially kind of like shy or reserved. But once I get to know people, like with friends, and you know, if I'm in a comfortable surrounding, like I'm pretty social. You know? I can kind of jump into most crowds. Yeah, and I've done that kind of forever. Like even in school, I kind of knew people in all the different little, you know, pockets. So, you know, whether it was a football player or, you know, acting, or whether it was the cheerleaders or the whoever, you know.
Or the boys at Jesus camp.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
interesting.
It's just, I've never had an issue like sort of getting to know people in any, you know, circle.
So you've always been able to relate to a wide variety of people and always been able to draw on a wide variety of personas. Do you feel like being able to think of your spiritual landscape as a carnival now, like does it, what kind of, does it give you any kind of power to be able to I mean, does it give you the ability to compartmentalize your energy, or like, you know, what? Like how
it probably should. I think as I've gotten older, it's become harder to stay focused on one thing. Oh, really? Because I have so many interests and different things that I enjoy or have enjoyed doing over the years that I think I'm more on the, you know, attention order. I find one thing that I'm interested in, and I do that for a little bit. Yeah. And then if something else pops up, I'm like, oh, wait, like, let me go over here and do that. So, which hasn't necessarily been helpful.
So, like, being a jack of all trades can have its advantages, but also, you know, the disadvantages. Right. But, you seem to draw a lot of energy from that, though.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Mm-hmm. Like it has allowed me to experience different things, but it's also caused me maybe not to go down one avenue 100% ever. So
and like a carnival being a place where like there's no set path, like you just kind
of wander.
There's so many blinking lights.
Definitely what I've done.
And there's so many things competing for your attention. Everything's equally exciting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And do you feel like
you know what would be nice though at the carnival?
What?
For my mental, I think, and I just thought of this while you're talking, but those, like some of the fairs have like the sky lift things that takes you from one side to the other. The
gondola rides?
Yeah, like where it goes in the air.
Yeah.
Whatever that's called.
Yeah.
And you just kind of oversee like everything that's going on and all the little people. Like, I think if my soul could do that every now and then and just kind of catch the glimpse of kind of the landscape, that would be helpful.
Well, now that you've spoken into existence, I mean, does that become a possibility?
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So if we keep rolling with that thought, the idea of, so before we had your carnival landscape and, it's fun and but there's no path, you can get kind of lost in it, and I guess being a jack of all trades or like whatever the carnival is representing, your competing interests. But now that you threw out this idea of the gondola ride, having an aerial view to kind of look down over almost like your constellated psyche, I mean, like, how does that help you think about it? Like that different perspective, what do you see differently?
Well, I think it allows me to take a breath because I'm not in the middle of the midway or on the ground having to decide where I'm going at that minute.
Okay.
Because up high, I can't do anything. Like I have to wait till it gets to the station to let me off. Mm-hmm. So all I can do is observe. And so I've had a really hard time, I think, as I've gotten older, like just observing.
Yeah, interesting, and it's so cool the way you describe it as having that effect, because of course the ability to look down from an aerial perspective, it inherently has that symbolism of being able to look objectively over the scene, not have to go in and participate. Which I don't
think I've ever been really good at. Like I've always been in the middle of
so
life
involved with the emotionality and that of the moment, So interesting. Do you think that could be a way of now that you've kind of been able to identify your spiritual landscape and then kind of even bring in this idea of being able to look at it from an aerial view? Like, do you think that's a way of, if you went into your spiritual landscape with deliberation and continued exploring that idea, being able to look down on it from an
I think it'd be helpful. Absolutely, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I think part of what as we're chatting, I think part of what I've learned is most of my life experiences have been sort of getting thrown in and I'm just having to do it or having to learn it on the spot. And so, I think if I could step back and kind of, peruse and go, okay, well, that over there sucked the last time I went in there, and I don't want to go back.
I'm not sticking my finger in that mousetrap again.
Right. Or I remember that food at that vendor, and that was really good. Versus, when you're ground level, maybe you don't remember exactly what that tent or that booth looked like, but from above, you have time to kind of think about it.
And then all the games are rigged anyway, so this way you keep a few more nickels in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
That is so cool. So the act of sitting still and of going slowly with this kind of bird's eye perspective, I mean, are you able to see more of the layout of your carnival? Like with, does your vantage point kind of increase?
Yeah, because obviously, your sight line's further and you actually see more past where the carnival ends, right?
Yeah, okay. So tell me about that.
I think, when you're in the carnival on ground level, you only see what goes to the perimeter of what the carnival stuff is.
Cool.
But when you're up in the air, you see past that. So you see like the parking lot or whatever.
Yeah, or the stinky reservoir.
Right, like whatever it's next to that's being hidden by a fence. Yeah, that you don't really know. Graveyard.
and the thunderstorm far off in the corner.
Right, right.
Wow, very cool. All right, so bring in all those details. Tell me everything new that you can see now, or like that, how you think the carnival's arranged, like.
Well, I think, at least on the outsides, I think, there's a parking area, right?
Okay.
Like where everybody, gets out and comes
in.
So you see that. I think in mine there's some sort of forest or something behind. Like maybe it's just kind of rural, area, undeveloped.
Okay.
Which actually would make sense if the carnival is developed soul. There'd be undeveloped area behind it.
That's very cool.
That is yet to be explored, maybe.
Very cool. And in future episodes, it may very well become possible for you to go there, because look, in just this, short a bit of time, we're already seeing these new horizons and a functionality to this spiritual craziness of the landscape, So that was really cool. All right. So you see the woodland behind the carnival. Anything else?
I think there's like a suburbs. Like there's like a housing area.
And where is that arranged?
I think it, probably off to one side.
Okay, maybe the right side.
Sure.
Okay.
And
it's your spiritual landscape, but you feel that it's out there.
Yeah, it's definitely to me the forest is kind of behind the carnival and the
pickles. I'm sorry, baby.
And that's the dog.
We're not apologizing to an actual pickle jar.
Just so you know, it's not a metaphor for anything.
Oh my gosh.
No gherkins.
It's like, how crazy are we? Like, are we seeing ghosts?
Right.
Man.
I'm just sighing. But yeah, so I think there's a housing thing maybe off to the right or wherever. Cul-de-sac. That's poor thing. And then the forest is behind, and then the parking lot, I think is where you come in. So that's at the front of this carnival area.
Okay, cool. Oh, and I mean, do we want to bring pickles on, or would that be too much chaos?
Probably too much chaos.
Probably too much chaos. I'm sorry, pickles. In a minute. Okay, cool. All right, so the sense of the suburbs. Okay, and keep rolling. Can you see anything else, or can you see anything in greater detail than you could before? I mean, do you almost feel like you got a sense of a map of your place now, or?
Pickles is killing me.
I know.
I'll go get her.
We can bring her out. Yeah, we'll give it a shot. We have to take a break anyway because usually the battery dies halfway through this. So. I love how you're actually discovering new stuff as we talk. That's what that's when this podcast is really like hits its stride, when people like really start to discover new stuff by speaking it into existence. And you were able to analyze what it meant to you as you spoke it. I mean, as soon as you said the gondola, to be able to understand that it's a way of, if your mind feels like this carnival and you see that carnival because of the experience you had in your life, and it's also because of the way your mind operates, your creativity and your ability to embody different persona and all of that, but to be able to guide it with just simply a sense of aerial perspective and objectivity. You know? It's really interesting. So do you think being able to see your mind with this spiritual landscape and as a metaphor that you can build on and draw new perspective and maybe insight for personal growth, like that see it evolving and helping you in the future as you work on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's one of those things where, as I look at the landscape now from above, I'm seeing sort of the bigger picture, of what the possibilities are versus what I'm sort of stuck thinking are my limitations.
Interesting. So what do you what kind of new possibilities do you almost have an intuition for now that you've been able to see it this way?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's still really new, right?
Yeah.
But you're working on a number of creative projects, right?
A few. One of which is like a teenage kids book.
Really?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where like I kind of woke up one night with this idea of a teenage gay zombie.
I love it.
And he's like any other, junior in high school struggling with his identity.
Yeah.
And all of the things that go along with that. Yeah. And he just happens to be gay. But he's also musical, so there's like all these facets to him.
Oh, he's got musical talent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I was trying to figure out like
it's pickle juice.
It will be after she's done with it. But it's like because like kids all have like the skin issues or the acne or the whatever, and his just happens to be the zombie, so his skin falls off pretty regularly.
Very cool. So he's a high school teenage zombie.
Yep.
Typical boy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And, all right. And I think he thinks that him being a zombie is like the biggest issue. I don't know that anybody else at the school really cares.
Even notices it.
Yeah. And because I think, looking back when I was a junior in high school, like I thought everybody cared about what I thought was my like hang-ups. Oh. But honestly, everybody's like going through their own stuff. Yeah. So I don't think anybody really ever focuses on like, somebody else. Like they're all trying to figure out the same thing.
Yeah, we're all so focused on our own zits.
Right.
That we don't notice. But I mean, what did you think were your hang-ups when you were going through junior high and in high school?
Well, I mean, definitely knowing that I was gay, so that's one thing that...
And when did you realize that? When did you, like, kind of know?
Well, I knew since 4th grade, but, this was back in the, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
So you didn't really talk about... Yeah. It wasn't as open as it is nowadays.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, the kids, I mean, they have it pretty good in that, from... literally elementary school or whatever, if they feel like they're gay, they can basically be like hello and do whatever they want to do.
Interesting. Okay, so you feel like you understand where this idea kind of came from, the idea of the zombie, and that's really cool. Interesting idea. Do you have like a name for the character or a name for your book so far?
Yeah,
I know it's like really
the name that I have is hi baby. Is the last name of the family is Now, N-O-W.
Okay.
Because I wanted it to be about the present.
Okay.
And the now.
Okay.
But because he's a zombie, I was trying to think of something to sort of symbolize the death.
Okay.
Zombies are walking dead.
Yeah.
And so I came up with his name is Gone.
Okay.
Now.
Gone Now.
And then his mom is Go Now and his dad is How Now.
How Now. So what is this feeling of the presence? Why do you feel like there's such an emphasis on you? Like you've said, you want it to be present. Like in what way?
I want it to be like real and now, like
relevant to our times.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And not sort of a fictitious 1950s or something.
And so just a way of kind of calling to the
exactly. Yeah.
With him being a zombie and understanding what it represents.
Well, I think,
a little.
As we're talking about it, I think the other thing that Now represents is he, even though he's living dead, he's got to live for the moment, right? Because he's got issues that most zombies have. Excuse me. So it's his skin's falling off, or his eyeball pops out, or whatever.
Oh my God, that'd be so funny.
And he's got to be present.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think maybe part of it, as we're talking, like maybe part of it is society in today's world is so virtual, like so social media and everything else, that there's this instantaneous like reaction to everything. And so maybe the now is even more poignant, right? Like it's everything that you do is consequential.
Yeah. Consequential. But, and now that you speak it reminds me too of the feeling that you had when you described your carnival, because you talked about how like being so wrapped up in the moment, like all of your attention's there, and then all of a sudden all your attention's over there. It's like the way that people act with social media, and it it's a really interesting dynamic that I feel like I hear you kind of beginning to articulate, where, you know, the people who are so caught up in the moment to moment, like zing zang of everything going on, they wind up being the people who are almost spiritually dead, because everything that's happening now in the moment, it's like you're so obsessed with it because you think it'll be this kind of immortality of like, this is the greatest thing ever. But they don't realize how quickly their attention has changed from here.
Yeah, and
they don't have
I think I'm guilty of that too, right?
And I've been.
Because I mean, that's kind of where we are now. Like
come here, baby.
Everything's reliant on you know, instantaneous social media or Twitter or whatever. Yeah. And you know, I think if we take time to get that aerial perspective, that it makes us slow down. And like the pandemic basically made us slow down, whether we wanted to or not. Yeah,
and I think it's really interesting now. Like now, I think I kind of get a intuition maybe on where you were coming from with this. With the last name being Now is, you know, the idea that people don't become spiritually alive until they realize that they were spiritually dead. Like you have to wake up to your old self.
What's the alternative, right?
And so like him being this upfront, in your face zombie, but he's not really like acknowledged it in himself or come to terms with it or whatever, you know, made peace with it. But it's like he seems like he has the potential to wake up to himself.
Right.
And, you know.
Yeah, and maybe that's, you know, since it's just focused on his junior and senior year, maybe that's the epiphany that happens before he graduates, right?
Yeah. Like, it seems like the story's kind of leading there.
Right.
You know, could be. That is really cool. I love that. Yeah. And what other kind of little moments in his life can you imagine, you know, as he wrestles with these tensions? Or
I think he definitely needs some relationship stuff going on, right? Like he needs to explore potentially having a boyfriend, or maybe it's just exploration with his inner circle of friends that, you know, are girls and guys, and just the normal talk that, you know, comes from a junior in high school, you know, trying to figure stuff out. So,
what kind of activities do you feel like? Yeah, I know you said music. But...
Yeah, I think he's not like in the band or anything, but I think he like maybe plays guitar or does something sort of offhand. I played piano as a kid, and you know, was in a couple talent shows in school. But I wasn't good enough to like be in the actual band. Like I was in middle school, but like everybody was in middle school band. Right? I was in the percussion section, so we like sat back there and goofed off. And, you know, we didn't have to learn notes; we just had to know when to hit stuff. So.
That's funny.
So as long as you could read, you know, the score to know when you were supposed to hit the drum, you're good.
Yeah, you could pop a few drinks in the meantime.
That's right.
Yeah. That's cool, though. I really like this idea. Yeah. And what's the kind of vibe, like almost the art style that you kind of imagine for it, or like?
Well, I think it's definitely detailed. Like I'm not like with cartoon or illustrations. Like I don't like the sort of just sketch drawing style. And some of the anime stuff is a little too loose for me. Like I definitely like. I like it when it's a little bit more realistic. Okay. But still, you know, fun. Still, you know, friendly. So.
Are there like other cartoon styles or feelings that you kind of like? It's not Futurama and it's not this, but it's kind of in between there. Is there like some kind of?
I'm trying to think of something current. Maybe I don't know. I would say probably more along the animated styles of like some of the cartoon movies. Okay. Like, you know, like a Rio or something where like the birds look like birds.
Oh, okay. So you imagine almost having this Pixar or DreamWorks kind of feel.
Or like Meet the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or whatever. Okay. Like those characters are human looking, but they're also drawn and cartoony, but they're not like abnormal.
Okay,
right?
So like somewhere in that kind of cartoon.
I think that's kind of
very cool. And what do you imagine this boy to look like? Is he kind of built, or is he like?
No, I think he's maybe a little scrawny. Okay. Maybe more along the like soccer player, swimmer physique. He's not unattractive, right? Okay. Um, I don't know, just kind of an average kid.
Mm-hmm. What kind of
little gangly?
A little gangly, and like, what? How would you describe his face? The shape of his face, maybe.
I mean, to me, it would be maybe a little bit more oblong than rounded or whatever. So kind of go with his gangly body.
Yeah, right? And his like oddness. Right, he's not so round around the corner.
Exactly.
He's a little misshapen, I guess. Cool. Can you see this in great detail, like your story? Like, I mean, what kind of detail can you see this in?
I mean, it's getting there, right? Like, it's kind of a work in progress. Mm-hmm. I definitely see sort of the details around the storyline, but as far as the illustration pieces, that's where I'm kind of needing somebody that can draw or like help figure out that part.
Interesting. It's kind of unrelated, but could you see this character potentially like, he's on a date or whatever and he like visits your carnival? Like, I don't know. Like, could you like, could you see these worlds like possibly colliding in some way?
Maybe he goes to a carnival.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
Yeah. I got the sense that your carnival was a very different kind of texture, right? Or
yeah, it's definitely more like rundown and rustic. And I kind of picture Gone as a little bit more crisp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, it's like it reflects his like innocence almost.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know, he's not aware of himself.
Right. Like the carnival's worn down, I think, because like, right, like I feel like I'm definitely getting older.
Oh,
so not that I'm worn down, but I've got some age. I think maybe that's why the carnival in my head like reflects that sort of weathered look. Whereas Gone is a brand new idea that I have, and because of his age as well.
Interesting.
He's very crisp, and the drawing is detailed, and whereas the carnival maybe is not quite as detailed.
How did the gondola look to you when you imagined the
like
gondola?
One of those just generic like bubble open with the little
like
side door.
Yeah, it's like a pod.
And you get in, somebody sits on the other side, and it rocks a little. And,
but did it look really like kind of like torn on the edges, like kind of really run down, or like did it look
it's kind of normal? Yeah,
normal, like
plastic, like that plasticky.
I was just curious because that was like a newer like epiphany that came to you. I was just curious if the gondolas like happened to look a little bit newer, like less run down.
Oh well, I guess it does. Yeah,
I don't know. Just curious, but those weird questions are always fun to ask. You know. And interesting. And so that's, again, also why I called this podcast Terraforming the Subconscious, because, where initially you threw out the idea early that this carnival felt kind of run down, but not scary. It's just kind of rusted or, like whatever,
well
state
used.
fair. Yeah. But now you're relating it. You're able to put your finger on where you think that energy came from, that used kind of slightly worn energy came from. And of course, in the real world, it's totally possible to like get out the elbow grease and get out the polish and like brush it up. I mean, could you see potential for your carnival kind of being re-energized and?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I've grown and gotten older, that there are things that I haven't revisited in a long time. Okay. That maybe it is time to bring those out and dust them off, right?
Interesting. So maybe in future podcasts, we can kind of like explore that a little bit. But that's cool. And I really like, I got your soul and your creativity and your personality, just all in a nutshell, with this very cool image. And it was cool to see the new connections you made just as we were talking and fitting all this.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey that you're sort of leading here.
Yeah. Did you enjoy this interview?
Yeah, it was good.
Cool. And let's see. Would you be interested to do like follow-ups in the future, like occasionally, and see how it evolves or how your project's coming on? And
yeah, that would be really cool. Like, part of it, I've got to kick myself in the butt and get moving on this project and get it out of my head.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
what do you kind of need to get it rolling? Like.
Well, I'm still working on somebody to do the illustration pieces. Okay. So I've asked a couple folks, including yourself, to see if you might want to sketch.
Yeah.
And then I think once I can get my ideas on recorded, then get with somebody that's more of like a copywriter or somebody that can form appropriate little chapters and things because I'm not a great writer.
Okay.
But I have the ideas. Right?
Okay.
Like I
so
know
you have the
idea. I know where I want it to go.
Okay. So you're hoping that the right artist would kind of get engaged and then kind of the artist could inspire the writing and the writing could inspire the artist.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
kind of a collaborative,
So
take what's in my head and get it out, cool. and then make it work. Right?
Well, and that's awesome that you say that because, of course, this podcast is exploring a spiritual landscape, but part of the spiritual landscape is there got to be people there, there got to be personas, and a lot of times where even though your landscape feels like it comes from an older place and this story feels much younger. Like I threw out kind of randomly that question, could you imagine him visiting this carnival? But it's like, it sounds kind of weird, but those opposite energies, just even as a creative exercise, if we could imagine them colliding,
maybe that's what we do next interview.
It's possible, and it's your world. Like, I always try not to suggest anything that is artificial, take it into a inauthentic direction. Somebody's doesn't feel like, oh, that really fits. You know what I mean? Like it's your subconscious. It's always a negotiation with your emotionality and everything else. You never force anything.
Right.
But it's just the idea of this new energy fusing with this old energy and then the whole revitalization that, because in order for that to fit into one picture requires a lot of barriers to be overcome. That's cool. And they both seem very deeply tied to your life and your personality.
There's definitely a lot of me that I think is going to go into Gone. Just my experiences, from being a kid.
That's very cool. Is that what you think you would title it? Title the book, the project?
Gone? Probably.
Just Gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm really excited to hear where you go with this. And
thanks. Yeah.
And we can totally do that too. Yeah, explore the story, explore the landscape together. Because that's what I want this podcast to be is, people, a lot of times we just need somebody to talk to, bat our ideas around with, and legitimize it with a line of questioning.
Yeah.
We speak it into existence and we make connections, and you just need somebody open and paying attention, to kind of catch it.
Cool.
And that's what I want this to be.
I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah. So, Paul, last question. Can you think of anybody else that might enjoy being interviewed for this podcast?
Let's see. Well, there's a lot, I think, that would be really cool with it.
Okay.
I would say my top one would be Zakia Jamassier.
Zakia Jamassier, yeah.
With Nations Foundation.
My good friend, yeah.
So
she's doing a lot of great stuff.
I think she's got just, years of experience and insight and so compassionate about the trans and the trans African American community and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, good. I'm gonna chase her down.
Do it. I'll text her.
Yeah, and in the future, it might totally become possible to do a group interview and get us some of our friends in together.
Jada and them do that red table or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, the view or whatever.
They sit at the table and talk about all their stuff.
And then it'd be cool, share discoveries and share how it's kind of changed your life a little bit or allowed you to reimagine your life. I don't know. This is all just still really early in the game. But, Paul, I really appreciate you hanging out and sharing with me.
Absolutely.
Your craziest, most creative self. So,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Look forward to hanging to you in the future. See ya. All right. How was that?
Cool.
Yeah?
That was better, yeah.
Yeah, I could see you in...
Because we were going a different direction. When we first started... and we were, oh my goodness. And we were talking about sort of the same. I was like, I'm trying to think of the same answers I gave last night.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's stupid. Why am I doing that?
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to encourage is that, like you said, the carnival is a place where, there is no one path. You know?
You just kind of wander.
We can explore this like a choose your own adventure,
Oh, we talked about that last night, didn't we?
Yeah.
But totally forgot all the stuff we were talking about.
It was so cool the way that you intuited this idea of the gondola. I can't remember how we got there all of a sudden. I think I was just asking what else can you see?
You were asking what else did I see at the carnival? And I don't know, for some reason I went in the air.
But it was so cool because it's again why I call this terraforming the subconscious, because I know in my life like my spiritual desert and why I saw a desert. What can I do to bring life there? It required me to have a different, perspective. Like the limitations that we suffer in life, they're creative problems. They require us to see our life and ourselves differently, to think about in something we'd never seen before in order to receive a new possibility. But it changes the way you see life. So to take it into this playful, spiritual playground sandbox, again, terraforming the subconscious. And you did it like right as we were talking. So, but
you're able to sort of lead, the questions enough, because like I've never explored like soul or any subconscious or any of that stuff. So
so it's like that's the tension that I am trying to balance as I do this podcast, because there are a lot of people who they're comfortable letting me lead with a line of questioning, and pull stuff out. And then there are other people that they just kind of explode and put everything out. And
and it's good that you sort of know the balance, right? Like you know when to engage and when to sort of
good. I'm
keep
glad
it
you
going.
think so.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous I talk too much.
No, because I think I've tried to do interviews and stuff too, with some of the stuff for work or whatever, and like you have your set of questions that you have to cover.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
don't
like
want this
sometimes it can be very like, okay, well, what do we do in between? It's like, what if there's just a short answer?
Yeah.
Like, then what do you do?
But it was so cool that this time, and I feel like we got such a great interview, because I felt like you almost allowed me to be the gondola that allowed us to kind of go and kind of build it up. It was really cool to see I could see it in your eyes, like new connections and stuff, and that's what I want this to be. So I just love seeing this unfold on the camera.
That's cool, yeah.
I mean, I really want to help creatives. I really want to help people that didn't know they were creatives. I want to help people who feel like stuck in life, like they're the zombie and they know it, but they want to bring life to that, So yeah, terraforming the subconscious, man.
I love the name.
That's how it works.
Good.
You like the name?
Yeah.
I was afraid it was too heavy at first, but...
Well, at first I was like, what the hell is that?
Because it sounds a lot more serious than it really is,
But after seeing a couple of them, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. Like,
and that's the whole power of it, So fundamentally, what we're doing here is what Carl Jung called active imagination. We tend to only engage with our subconscious as a passive or involuntary means through your daydream and its procrastination, or your night terrors, which just scare you. But when you can identify this kernel or this door to this world, and you build and say, well, I see this, but why do I see the carnival? And it's like, well, if I feel kind of very energetic, but I can't have an objective sense, like you terraformed it, and it allows you to have a sense of a spiritual path of, how you can grow, because you can totally wield that spontaneous and in the moment energy, but at the same time, to complete the picture, we also have to be able to look objectively and have a sense of overall path and mission. And, I can't wait to see how it guides your creative process.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Yeah, well, I loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you.